I am Clara, 34 years old. And the night I finally launched my dream company, my family decided my greatest achievement was merely a stepping stone for my brother's greed. I stood alone in my newly leased 2-story office space in downtown Chicago, staring at a 100 untouched crystal champagne flutes. I had invited my parents, my brother, and his wife to celebrate 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Instead, I was abandoned. But the real betrayal arrived an hour later, through a text message from my mother. She casually explained they skipped my event for my brother's housewarming party before demanding I hand over 30% of my company to him, simply because he once gave me the idea to study communications. I did not cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and uncovered a financial crime so massive it would send them all crawling to their knees. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to toxic family members who treated you like nothing but a bank account. The floor-to-ceiling windows of my new PR and crisis management agency reflected the glittering Chicago skyline, but all I could see was my own pathetic reflection. I wore a tailored navy suit I had saved up for months to buy. The catering staff had laid out a beautiful spread of expensive artisan appetizers on velvet-draped tables. A string trio was playing softly in the corner. It was supposed to be the defining moment of my career. After surviving on cheap takeout, working 80-hour weeks, and sacrificing every ounce of my personal life, I had finally made it. I had rented a luxury SUV to pick up my father Thomas, my mother Barbara, my younger brother Bradley, and his wife Jasmine. I had even reserved the best table at a 5-star steakhouse for our celebration dinner afterward. But the SUV driver had called me 2 hours ago, confused, saying nobody answered the door at my parents' house. I had left frantic voicemails. "Hey Mom, the ribbon cutting is in 20 minutes. Where are you guys?" "Bradley, did the driver get lost?" I paced the hardwood floors, making excuses for them in my head. Traffic was terrible. There was an emergency. Something unavoidable had happened. But as the clock struck 9, the truth settled heavily over my shoulders. They were not coming. I watched my dedicated staff quietly pack away the untouched food, their eyes carefully avoiding mine. They knew. They had heard my increasingly desperate phone calls. I forced a smile, them for their hard work, and dismissed everyone early, telling them to take the leftover food and enjoy their weekend. When the heavy glass doors finally clicked shut, leaving me completely alone in the massive, echoey office, the silence was deafening. I walked over to my desk and sank into my leather chair. I pulled out my phone, driven by a masochistic need to know why my entire existence had been ignored. I navigated to social media. Right at the top of my feed was a live video broadcast from my sister-in-law, Jasmine. Jasmine was a beautiful African-American woman who had built a modest following as a luxury lifestyle influencer. It was a career she funded entirely with my brother Bradley's money, or rather the money Bradley constantly begged out of me. I tapped the screen. Jasmine was spinning around a massive glittering marble kitchen island. "Cheers to our new mansion, you guys." She squealed into the camera, holding up a glass of expensive champagne. Bradley and I finally closed on our dream home. "We are surrounded by family tonight, and we are just so blessed." The camera panned across a crowded, lavishly decorated living room. There was my father, Thomas, laughing loudly and clinking glasses with Bradley. There was my mother Barbara, wiping away a proud tear as she hugged Jasmine. They had not forgotten my grand opening. They had simply chosen a housewarming. My name is Clara. I am 29 years old, and I recently discovered that the people who are supposed to love you the most can also be the ones holding the sharpest knives. After risking everything I owned to launch my dream business, my own family left me completely abandoned on the most important day of my life, only to demand a massive cut of my profits a few hours later. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life to protect your own peace. Growing up, I was always the responsible one, the quiet achiever who never asked for much, while my younger sister Haley demanded the spotlight. I spent the last 3 years pouring my heart, soul, and every penny of my savings into opening an upscale artisan bakery in the heart of downtown Chicago. It was a brutal journey filled with sleepless nights, endless loan applications, and moments where I almost gave up. But I pushed through, driven by the vision of my opening day. I had meticulously planned the grand opening for months. I reserved the best table in the center of the shop, specifically for my parents and Haley. I bought expensive floral centerpieces just for their table, and even baked Haley her favorite raspberry macarons, placing them perfectly on a silver tray. I wanted to prove to them that I was successful, that I was worthy of their pride. The morning of the grand opening was beautiful. The sun was shining, and a line of eager customers had already formed outside before I even unlocked the doors. When I turned the sign to open, a rush of people flooded in. The smell of fresh pastries filled the air, and the energy was incredible. Local food bloggers were taking photos, and the cash register did not stop ringing. By all standard measures, the event was a massive, overwhelming success. Yet, every time the glass door chimed, my eyes darted toward the entrance, expecting to see my mother and father walking in with proud smiles. An hour passed, then two. The morning rush transitioned into a busy afternoon. The reserved table sat completely empty, a glaring reminder of their absence, amidst a room full of strangers who were celebrating my hard work. Customers kept asking if anyone was sitting there, and I had to keep lying, saying my family was stuck in traffic. I checked my phone repeatedly, but there were no missed calls and no text messages wishing me luck. I tried calling my mother, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried my father and then Haley. Nothing but silence. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I spent the entire day plastering a fake smile on my face, thanking customers and pretending my heart was not breaking into a million pieces. When I finally closed the shop at 8:00 that evening, I was physically exhausted and emotionally drained. I locked the front door, turned off the overhead lights, and sat alone at that empty reserve table, staring at the untouched silver tray of macarons. Needing a distraction from the deafening silence of the bakery, I pulled out my phone and mindlessly opened Instagram. The very first thing that popped up on my feed was a story posted by Haley just 2 hours ago. My breath caught in my throat. It was a high-definition video of her, my mother, and my father sitting on the deck of a pristine white yacht. They were clinking champagne glasses and laughing loudly against a backdrop of turquoise water. The caption read, "Spontaneous weekend getaway to Miami, with the best parents ever celebrating my half-birthday." I felt completely numb. A half-birthday. They missed the grand opening of my business, the day I had been talking about for 3 years, the day they promised they would never miss to celebrate a completely made-up milestone for my sister on a rented yacht in Florida. I stared at the screen, watching the 15-second clip loop over and over again. My mother was smiling, looking perfectly relaxed in a designer sun hat. My father was holding a ridiculously expensive cigar, cheering at the camera. They looked so incredibly happy, completely unbothered by the fact that they had broken a promise they made to me months ago. The betrayal cut deep, slicing through years of excuses I had made for their blatant favoritism. I suddenly realized that my empty table at the bakery was not an accident or an unavoidable scheduling conflict. It was a clear, intentional statement of how little I mattered to them. They did not forget my opening day. They actively chose to ignore it. As I sat there in this quiet darkness of my bakery, letting the harsh reality wash over me, my phone suddenly vibrated against the wooden table. The screen lit up with a new text message. It was from my mother. For a brief, foolish second, the wounded inner child in me thought it might be an apology. I thought she might say they lost track of time, or that they were so incredibly sorry they missed my big day. I opened the message, and what I read made my blood run absolutely cold. The text read, "Hi Clara, looks like your little bakery thing went well today from the pictures online. Since you are making money now, we need to talk about your contribution. Haley's yacht rental was a bit more than we headed for, and she is stressed about her credit card bill. We expect you to transfer 30% of your opening weekend profits to her account by Monday morning. Consider it payback for all the times we supported you growing up. Love, Mom." I read the message 3 times, unable to process the sheer audacity of her words. An audacious 30% demand, not for a family emergency, not for a medical bill, but to fund my sister's frivolous luxury yacht party. The very same party they attended, instead of showing up to support me. They had the nerve to completely ignore my massive milestone, flaunt their extravagant trip on social media, and then treat me like their own personal ATM. A strange, terrifying calmness washed over me. The profound sadness that had been suffocating me all day instantly evaporated, replaced by a searing, laser-focused anger. They wanted 30% of my hard-earned money for a sister who never lifted a single finger in her life. They wanted to maintain their perfect wealthy image, while expecting me to quietly foot the bill behind the scenes. I locked the screen of my phone and stood up from the table. I walked over to the trash can and scraped the tray of Haley's favorite raspberry macarons right into the garbage. That deeply insulting text message was the final push I needed. I was completely done playing the good compliant daughter, and it was time they learned what happens when they push me too far. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring, loud splashing and upbeat party music echoing in the background. "Clara," she yelled over the yacht party noise. "Did you process the transfer yet? Haley wants another round of premium champagne for her guests," and her card declined. I gripped the steel counter, my knuckles turning white. "You skipped the grand opening of my business to throw a fake birthday party on a yacht," I said, my voice deadpan and razor-sharp. "And now you are demanding I hand over 30% of my opening weekend revenue to pay for your alcohol. Do not use that disrespectful tone with me." Barbara snapped her festive cheer, instantly hardening into a commanding scowl. "Your sister needed to unwind. You have no idea how hard it is for her to maintain her social circle. You just stand behind a counter all day baking bread. You have no husband and no children to worry about. The least you can do is support the family who raised you. Support the family." I repeated, a harsh laugh escaping my throat. "Mom, I have been your personal bank account for a decade. I paid for Haley's entire wedding, when you and Dad claimed you were broke. I bailed my older brother Bradley out of credit card debt 3 times. I even paid the down payment on the luxury apartment where he and his wife Jasmine currently live. Jasmine films makeup tutorials while Bradley jumps between failed startups. I funded all of it. That is your duty as a successful single woman, my father." Thomas shouted suddenly, cutting into the call on speakerphone. "We are a family, Clara. Families share their wealth. Your brother and sister are building lives, maintaining appearances, and securing the family legacy. You just bake pastries. You have more than enough cash to share with the people who matter." I stared out the dark bakery window. They truly believed my money was community property, simply because I chose to build a career instead of a traditional family. They felt completely entitled to the fruits of my grueling labor. "I am not transferring a single dime to Haley," I stated firmly, ignoring my father's booming voice. "I worked 80 hours a week for 3 years to build this company. I slept on a mattress on the floor to save every penny. Neither of you contributed a single dollar or a single word of encouragement. The bank is permanently closed. Do not ask me for money again. You listen to me right now," my mother screamed, the sound of the ocean waves momentarily drowned out by her fury. "You will transfer those funds by tomorrow morning, or your father and I will never attend another one of your little business events. We will cut you off completely. We will not support a selfish, ungrateful child who refuses to uplift her own flesh and blood." "Go ahead," I replied, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Enjoy the yacht. It is the last free ride you will ever get from me." I hung up the phone, cutting off my father's enraged shouting. The silence of the bakery settled around me again, but this time it did not feel lonely. It felt like absolute freedom. I walked over to the cash register area and pulled out my laptop. If they wanted to play hardball, I was going to cut off every single financial tie connecting us. No more paying their cell phone bills. No more quiet bailouts. I logged into my banking portal to cancel the automatic monthly transfers to my parents' retirement account. But, as the dashboard loaded, a glaring red banner at the top of the screen made my blood run completely cold. Credit limit exceeded. Immediate payment required. I frowned, my heart hammering against my ribs as I clicked on the urgent alert. The notification was tied to a secondary credit card account I had opened 3 years ago. Bradley had been in a minor car accident, and my parents had begged me to co-sign a high-limit medical credit card for him to cover his physical therapy and rehabilitation. They swore on their lives it would only be used for extreme medical emergencies. I had not checked that specific account in months because the balance was always safely at zero. The current balance was $45,000. My breath caught. I frantically pulled up the itemized statement, scanning the charges. There were no charges for physical therapy. There were no hospital visits, no pharmacy bills, no medical expenses of any kind. Instead, the statement read like a luxury shopping spree. Not $12,000 at a high-end Italian furniture importer, $8,500 at an elite home theater installation company, $5,000 to a luxury landscaping firm, $15,000 to an upscale catering company, and finally a $4,500 charge to a boutique travel agency for a couple's wellness retreat to Tulum. They had not just skipped my grand opening. They had used my emergency medical credit card to fund the massive housewarming party Bradley and Jasmine were currently throwing back in Chicago. The catering company charge matched the exact date of their party. While my parents were out partying on a yacht with Haley in Florida, my golden child brother and his influencer wife had maxed out my credit to furnish their apartment and throw an extravagant catered bash for their wealthy friends. The sheer audacity of the crime left me momentarily paralyzed. My family was throwing parties with my money, celebrating their unearned luxury, while simultaneously demanding 30% of the bakery I had bled to build. I immediately grabbed my car keys and locked the bakery doors behind me. I was not going to negotiate. I was going to drive straight to my brother's lavish housewarming party and burn their stolen fantasy to the ground. The drive to Bradley's luxury apartment took 40 minutes, but the anger coursing through my veins made it a blur. My knuckles ached from gripping the steering wheel. Every red light amplified the burning rage in my chest. I had spent years managing every cent I earned, denying myself comforts to get my business off the ground. Meanwhile, my brother was living like royalty on my stolen dime. When I pulled up to the glittering high-rise, a valet rushed over to open my door. I tossed him my keys without a word, my eyes fixed on the towering structure above. The lobby was a massive testament to obscene wealth, featuring imported marble floors and a cascading water feature that spanned the entire back wall. I bypassed the concierge, slipping into the elevator behind a group of well-dressed guests holding expensive champagne bottles. I knew exactly which floor to press. Bradley had been bragging about his penthouse views in our family group chat for weeks. The elevator doors slid open to the sound of heavy bass and raucous laughter. The party was in full swing, spilling out into the private hallway. I pushed past a group of people taking selfies by the entrance and stepped boldly inside the apartment. The sheer scale of the theft hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. The living room was massive, bathed in the warm glow of custom overhead lighting. Right in the center sat the $12,000 Italian leather sectional from my credit card statement. A group of men in tailored suits were laughing and spilling their drinks dangerously close to the pristine white leather. Mounted on the far wall was the $8,500 home theater system, playing muted music videos on a massive flat screen. The air smelled strongly of expensive truffle orbs and top-shelf liquor courtesy of the $15,000 catering charge. I stood near the bustling entryway, a silent observer in my flour-dusted workflow, watching my stolen money being paraded around as their grand success. Across the crowded room, Jasmine was holding court. She looked absolutely stunning in a shimmering gold designer dress, her makeup flawless, her hair perfectly styled. She was holding her phone high on a sophisticated ring light stabilizer, broadcasting a live stream directly to her followers. I walked closer, blending easily into the crowd to hear every single word she was saying. "Welcome to our beautiful new sanctuary, you guys." Jasmine beamed brightly into the camera, doing a slow, dramatic spin to showcase the sprawling living space. Beal Bradley and I have been manifesting this dream for so incredibly long. It just goes to show, that if you grind hard enough and stay completely focused on your brand, the universe rewards you. We paid for every single piece of this gorgeous furniture with sheer hustle. Hard work truly pays off. I felt a sickening twist of pure disgust in my stomach. She was crediting the universe and her non-existent hustle for the $45,000 she and my brother had committed blatant fraud to obtain. Bradley walked confidently into the frame, wrapping his arm securely around Jasmine's waist. I was wearing a custom velvet blazer and holding a heavy crystal glass of amber whiskey. He smiled handsomely for the camera, perfectly playing the role of the highly successful tech founder. I could not be prouder of my beautiful wife, Bradley told the thousands of viewers, kissing her cheek softly. We built this amazing life together. Next month, we are heading to Tulum for a well-deserved wellness retreat to celebrate our massive success. Stay tuned for all the upcoming travel vlogs. A $4,500 luxury retreat paid for entirely by the emergency medical credit line I had strictly opened to cover his supposed physical therapy. I felt a cold, calculating energy fully replace my initial shock. I did not want to scream. I did not want to throw a wild tantrum. I wanted to meticulously dismantle their entire facade piece by piece. I aggressively pushed my way through the dense crowd of flashy influencers and pseudo-entrepreneurs. Several people gave me dirty looks, visibly judging my plain bakery apron and flour-stained jeans among their endless sea of sequins and silk. I finally broke right through the tight circle of people surrounding Bradley and Jasmine. I stopped right in front of her bright ring light, staring directly into the small camera lens. Jasmine lowered her phone slightly, her fake camera-ready smile faltering instantly as she registered my sudden presence. "Clara," she said, her voice tight with extremely forced enthusiasm. "What a total surprise. We did not expect you to show up. I thought you were super busy working at the bakery tonight." Bradley's face completely drained of color the second his eyes met mine. He quickly took a step back, instinctively glancing around the crowded room to see exactly who was watching. He knew. He saw the absolute cold fury burning in my eyes and instantly realized that the bank had notified me about the massive balance. "I am not here to party, Jasmine," I said firmly, my voice carrying clearly over the thumping bass of the loud music. "I am here to collect my stolen furniture." Jasmine nervously laughed out loud, desperately trying to play it off for her livestream audience. "You are so funny, Clara. Guys, my sister-in-law has the absolute craziest sense of humor, always making silly jokes." "It is definitely not a joke," I stated loudly, stepping much closer and forcing her to take a quick step back against her brand new white leather sofa. "You and Bradley used my emergency medical credit card to furnish this entire apartment and hire that expensive catering staff. $45,000 of unauthorized charges. You blatantly stole my money to throw a luxury housewarming party, and I am here to shut it all down completely." The music in the massive living room seemed to stop, though it was only my sharp focus tuning out everything except the two absolute frauds standing before me. The tight circle of influencers and socialites stared in stunned silence. Jasmine's ring light illuminated the sheer panic flashing across her perfectly contoured face. She fumbled with her phone, ending the live stream abruptly, but the damage was already done. Thousands of people had just heard the truth. "Are you completely insane?" Jasmine hissed, dropping her sweet influencer persona instantly. Her voice dropped to a vicious, venomous pitch. "You do not ever disrespect my brand like that in front of my followers. Do you have any idea how many sponsorships I could lose because of your little outburst? You are going to ruin my career over a complete misunderstanding." "Your brand," I echoed, taking another step forward. "Your brand is built on fraud and a maxed-out credit card that does not belong to you." Bradley quickly stepped between us, puffing out his chest in a pathetic attempt at intimidation. "Calm down, Clara. You are acting hysterical right now. You are making a massive scene over absolutely nothing. We did not steal anything. You co-signed that card for me. My name is on the account. That makes it my money too. And I decided to invest it in our living space." I stared at my older brother, truly amazed by the depth of his delusion. "I consigned a medical credit line 3 years ago so you could afford physical therapy after your car accident," I stated clearly, ensuring the remaining guests in the room could hear every single word. I did not co-sign a luxury lifestyle fund. You charged $45,000 in 3 days. You bought a $12,000 couch. You bought an $8,000 home theater system. You hired a 5-star catering company. None of that is physical therapy. Bradley, you are so incredibly selfish. Jasmine chimed in, crossing her arms defensively and glaring at me. Bradley is a visionary. He needs a high-end environment to network with investors, and I need a pristine aesthetic to maintain my social media presence. We are public figures, Clara. We have an image to uphold. You sit in a kitchen baking muffins all day. You do not understand what it takes to survive in the luxury space. We were going to pay you back eventually. You just needed to be patient instead of acting like a crazy person and storming in here. Pay me back with what I demanded. My voice echoing off the high ceilings. Neither of you has a steady income. Your entire life is an illusion funded by my credit score. You are playing house with my money. Before Bradley could formulate another pathetic excuse, his cell phone started ringing loudly in his pocket. He pulled it out and I caught a glimpse of the bright screen. Ninth, it was our mother calling all the way from her yacht vacation in Miami. She must have been watching Jasmine's live stream before it cut out. Bradley quickly answered and put the phone on speaker, clearly believing our parents would instantly back him up and put me in my place, just like they always did. Clara, my mother's voice, shrieked through the phone speaker, echoing loudly in the tense, quiet living room. What on earth is wrong with you? Have you completely lost your mind? How dare you barge into your brother's house and humiliate his beautiful wife on the internet for everyone to see? Mom, he stole $45,000 from me, I replied, my voice steady. Despite the massive adrenaline dump coursing through my system, he maxed out the emergency medical card to buy furniture and throw a party. Oh, stop being so dramatic. My mother scoffed dismissively, the sound of seagulls and ocean waves faintly audible in the background. It is just money, Clara. Your brother told us he was using the card to get on his feet in his new place. We gave him full permission to use it. We knew you would not mind once you saw how happy they were. You gave him permission. I repeated the sheer absurdity of the statement, momentarily stunning me. You gave him permission to max out my credit line. You cannot give permission for someone else to steal my hard-earned money. Do not use that word, my father yelled, his booming voice suddenly joining the speakerphone call dripping with extreme condescension. Nobody stole anything from you. You are twisting the truth because you are deeply jealous. You have always been jealous of Bradley. He is building a beautiful home with his wife, and you are just angry because you are alone with your little bakery. You owe your brother this money. If he had not encouraged you to start baking years ago, you would not even have that successful shop. You owe this family your success, and you owe him your financial support. The gaslighting was so intense, so deeply ingrained in their unified front that for a split second, a very old, very conditioned part of my brain questioned my own reality. This was exactly how they had controlled me my entire life. They shifted the blame, altered the facts, and aggressively attacked my character until I was too exhausted to fight back. They wanted me to believe that my anger was an overreaction, that my boundaries were actually acts of selfishness, and that their blatant theft was somehow a noble family tradition I was failing to uphold. But I was no longer the quiet, compliant daughter desperate for their approval. I saw right through the manipulation. Let me get this straight, I said, looking directly at Bradley, who was now smirking triumphantly since our parents had enthusiastically validated his massive financial crime. You honestly think that because we share DNA, you are legally entitled to commit identity theft and credit card fraud? Yes, that is exactly what I think. Bradley shot back, his smirk widening. We are family. You have money. I needed money. It is not fraud. It is wealth redistribution. Mom and Dad agree. So go back to your bakery. Listen to your brother, Clara. My father boomed through the phone. Stop embarrassing us and go home. I looked around the room. The guests were whispering, watching the drama unfold. Jasmine was checking her phone, completely unbothered that she was standing on stolen property. They all believed I would back down and absorb the debt to keep the peace. That was the old Clara. The new Clara was going to burn this charade to the ground. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. I did not yell or argue. I dialed the premium support number on the back of my primary credit card, linked directly to the medical line they drained. I tapped speakerphone and held the device up high. "What are you doing?" Bradley demanded, his smirk finally slipping. "Who are you calling?" "Welcome to Elite Financial Services." An automated voice echoed through the living room. "Please hold for a fraud specialist." Jasmine lunged forward to grab my arm, but I quickly stepped away. "You cannot call the bank," she hissed frantically. "You will ruin his credit score." "He ruined his credit years ago," I replied coldly. "That is why he stole mine." A live representative answered. "Good evening. My name is David. Am I speaking with Clara?" "Yes," I said, staring into Bradley's panicked eyes. "I am reporting severe fraudulent activity on my account ending in 4492. The card was used without my authorization for multiple massive transactions. I need the account locked immediately and every pending charge flagged for fraud and completely reversed." Bradley lunged, his face turning red. "Hang up that phone right now, Clara. I swear to God." David remained calm over the speaker. "I am sorry to hear that. I am locking the card immediately. I see several large pending charges, including a $15,000 hold for premium catering services. Would you like me to reverse that transaction right now?" "Yes," I said loudly, ensuring my voice carried over the party. Cancel the catering charge immediately. It is entirely unauthorized." Jasmine gasped loudly, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, Clara, please. The caterers are setting up the dessert bar right now. If that payment reverses, they will pack up the food and leave. My guests will starve." "That sounds like a personal problem," I replied without an ounce of pity. "The card is permanently locked," David confirmed. "The $15,000 catering charge has been successfully reversed. We will mail you a fraud affidavit regarding the remaining cleared balance." "Thank you, David," I said, and ended the call. The room descended into absolute chaos. Jasmine shrieked loudly, realizing her perfect influencer party was about to lose its primary food and alcohol supply. Bradley grabbed his hair, pacing furiously. On his dropped phone, my parents were still screaming, but nobody was listening anymore. "You vindictive monster," Bradley roared, pointing a shaking finger in my face. "You just ruined my housewarming party. You reverse the payment, they will take the food away." "Then I suggest you order some cheap pizzas, Bradley," I said calmly, refusing to step back. Right on cue, a man wearing a crisp black chef coat pushed his way through the whispering guests. It was the head caterer, looking absolutely furious. He marched straight past me and stood in front of Bradley. "Mr. Davis, our accounting department just notified me that your $15,000 payment was reversed due to a fraud alert," the caterer announced loudly. "I need a new form of payment immediately, or my staff is packing up the food and alcohol." Jasmine looked like she was going to pass out. She grabbed Bradley's arm frantically. "Brad, give him your primary credit card. Do something right now." Bradley patted his velvet blazer pockets nervously, sweat beading on his forehead. "I do not have any room on my cards, babe. They are completely maxed out." He picked up his phone from the floor. "Mom, Dad, I need you to wire me 15 grand right now. We are on a yacht in Miami." Thomas yelled through the speaker, his voice tight with sudden panic. "We do not have that kind of liquid cash available right now. Your sister was supposed to send us 30% of her bakery profits." The caterer crossed his arms, glaring at Bradley. "I do not care about your family drama, sir. I need a valid payment right now, or we are leaving." Bradley stared at the caterer, his jaw tight with humiliation. "Please just give me until tomorrow morning," he begged, completely dropping his arrogant tech founder persona. "The banks are closed. I will wire you the full amount, plus a massive tip the second they open." The caterer let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head in absolute disgust. "We do not work on IUs, buddy. My staff has families to feed." He turned around and shouted to his team across the massive room. "Pack it all up, guys. The party is officially over." A collective groan erupted from the remaining guests. People immediately started putting their half-empty drink glasses down on the expensive imported tables and making a direct line for the front door. Nobody wanted to stick around a dry, foodless party hosted by confirmed frauds. Jasmine burst into dramatic, hysterical tears, aggressively slapping Bradley on the shoulder and screaming about how he had completely destroyed her flawless online reputation. I watched the grand collapse of their stolen empire with absolute satisfaction. I did not say another word. I simply turned around, walked out the front door, and took the elevator down to the lobby. The financial ties binding me to these toxic people were finally severed forever. But the real legal war was just beginning. The morning after the disastrous housewarming party, I woke up before sunrise. I felt exhausted, my body aching from the massive adrenaline crash. But my mind was incredibly sharp. I put on my tailored suit and drove downtown. My business was not just a standalone artisan bakery anymore. Our retail success had allowed me to secure a corporate office suite above the shop. Here, I handled wholesale contracts and brand management for high-profile clients. Today was the most important day of my entire career, and I was determined not to let my toxic family ruin it. At exactly 9, I stood in my glass-walled conference room, arranging financial projections on the mahogany table. I was preparing to pitch to Naomi, a venture capitalist known across Chicago for her ruthless business acumen. Naomi was launching a massive tech fund and needed an exclusive corporate partner to handle all VIP event logistics and public relations. Securing her account meant a guaranteed multi-million-dollar retainer. It would elevate my company to an elite corporate powerhouse. Naomi arrived precisely at 9:30. She was a fiercely intelligent woman, wearing a pristine cream-colored pantsuit that screamed quiet luxury. My assistant escorted her into the conference room. Naomi did not waste time on meaningless small talk. She took a seat, opened her leather briefcase, and pulled out my proposal. "I have reviewed your numbers, Clara," Naomi said, her sharp eyes scanning the documents. "Your retail growth is impressive, but I need to know you can handle high-pressure corporate execution. My investors expect absolute perfection. If we hire your firm for our events, there is absolutely zero room for public relations disasters or logistical failures. Can you guarantee that level of stability?" I sat up perfectly straight, projecting absolute confidence. "Naomi, I built this entire company from the ground up without a single safety net. I anticipate blowback. I aggressively manage crises before they happen, and I do not sugarcoat risks. I am fully prepared to deploy a dedicated team exclusively for your tech fund. You will not find a more stable partner in this city." Naomi looked at me intently for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then the corner of her mouth twitched into a small, approving smile. "I appreciate a founder who knows her exact worth," she replied, picking up her gold pen. "Let us discuss the specific terms of the retainer." For the next 30 minutes, the meeting flowed flawlessly. We negotiated the contract details, finalized the exclusive catering and PR parameters, and agreed on a massive upfront payment. I felt a thrilling rush of professional validation. All those sleepless nights and sacrifices were finally culminating in this exact moment. Naomi laid the final contract on the table, clicking her pen to sign. Suddenly, a massive crash echoed from the reception area outside the glass walls. I frowned instantly, standing up from my chair. "Please excuse me for one moment, Naomi." Before I could reach the door handle, the heavy glass door burst wide open. Bradley and Jasmine stormed into my corporate conference room like a destructive hurricane, violently shoving past my frantic receptionist. Jasmine looked completely unhinged. Her perfect influencer makeup was smeared, and she was holding her phone up high on her ring light stabilizer, actively live streaming. Bradley looked manic, his eyes bloodshot, clutching a worn manila folder in his shaking hands. "Bradley, what on earth are you doing?" I demanded immediately, stepping between them and Naomi, who was now watching the sudden chaos with narrowed, calculating eyes. "I am taking back what is rightfully mine," Bradley shouted, slamming the manila folder down onto the polished mahogany table, right next to Naomi's multi-million-dollar contract. "You thought you could cancel that credit card and walk away. You thought you could humiliate us and destroy my wife's career. I am a legal co-founder of this entire company, and I am here to collect my 30% equity right now." Jasmine shoved her phone camera directly toward my face, ignoring the professional environment. "Look at her, you guys. Jasmine shrieked to her live stream audience. We are live at Clara's corporate headquarters. This is the toxic woman who abuses her own family. She is actively trying to steal my husband's business. She reversed our payments and tried to ruin our home. She is a complete fraud. Naomi placed her gold pen down on the table. Her approving smile completely vanished, replaced by a mask of pure ice. Clara, who are these unstable people? They are trespassers, I stated clearly, my voice remaining perfectly steady, even though my heart was pounding furiously against my ribs. I turned to my receptionist, who was hovering terrified in the doorway. Call building security right now. Tell them to send guards immediately. You cannot kick us out of our own building. Bradley roared, puffing out his chest and stepping aggressively into my personal space. You owe me $45,000 for the damage you caused last night, and you owe me 30% of this business. I have absolute legal proof. You promised me a massive cut of your success. Mom and Dad are backing me up completely. Sign the company over to my name today, or I am burning your reputation to the ground. I glared at my older brother, feeling profound disgust for the pathetic man standing in front of me. You do not own anything, Bradley. Get out of my office before you are dragged out in handcuffs. Jasmine continued screaming into her phone, attempting to rile up her followers by claiming she was being physically attacked. The serene professional atmosphere of my greatest business triumph had been instantly transformed into a viral trashy reality show. They deliberately tracked me down at my corporate office to orchestrate maximum public humiliation, hoping the pressure would force me to surrender. They simply had no idea they had just stepped into a war they could never win. Bradley forcefully ripped open the worn manila folder, his hands trembling with manic energy. I am not leaving until you sign the transfer documents, he snarled, pulling out a small wrinkled piece of paper. He slammed it down on the polished mahogany table, right next to Naomi's pristine multi-million-dollar contract. I have absolute legal proof. You signed this, Clara, 5 years ago. You signed away 30% of your future success to me. I stared down at the piece of paper he had so aggressively presented. It was not a notarized legal document. It was not drafted by an attorney. It was a literal faded cocktail napkin. It was a stained paper napkin from a cheap dive bar we had gone to 5 years ago to celebrate my very first promotion at my old corporate job. We had been drinking heavily that night. On the thin, tearing paper written in my messy, drunken handwriting were the words, I promise to share all my future success with my amazing older brother. We are in this together. 30% for the idea guy. Underneath the sloppy text was my practically illegible signature. I looked at the wrinkled napkin and then looked up at Bradley's triumphant, desperate face. I was genuinely amazed by the sheer depths of his delusion. You cannot possibly be serious right now, I said, my voice dripping with absolute incredulity. You brought a 5-year-old stained bar napkin to a corporate office, and you are actively trying to enforce it as a binding equity agreement. It is a written contract bearing your signature, Bradley insisted loudly, pounding his fist against the expensive table. Naomi subtly shifted her chair back, creating distance from his unpredictable outburst. You explicitly agreed to give me 30% of your future success because I told you to take that promotion. I was the visionary behind your entire career. I have absolute legal rights to your bakery and this corporate expansion. If you do not sign this company over to a parent corporation under my name right, the second I am suing you for fraud and embezzlement. Jasmine moved closer to the table, shoving her phone camera inches from my face. The bright glare of her ring light reflected in the conference room windows. Look at her, you guys. Jasmine yelled to her viewers, completely ignoring the fact that she was currently trespassing in a private corporate office. Look at the cold-blooded CEO actively stealing from her own flesh and blood. She used my husband for his brilliant business ideas and then completely cut him out of the profits. We are fully exposing you today, Clara. You cannot silence us anymore. The entire internet is going to know exactly what kind of monster you truly are. I took a deep, steadying breath, completely ignoring the glowing camera lens shoved in my face. I looked directly at Bradley with a mixture of profound pity and absolute disgust. Bradley, I said, maintaining a dangerously calm and even tone. A drunk scribble on a flimsy bar napkin completely lacks legal consideration, clear terms, and any standing in a court of law. It is not a legally binding contract. It is a piece of trash. Just like this pathetic stunt you are trying to pull, I am calling a massive team of lawyers, Bradley screamed, his face turning a deep angry shade of purple. I am taking everything from you. Mom and Dad are fully backing me up on this. They know exactly how unstable you are. They are ready to testify in open court that you have been secretly planning to rob me of my rightful equity for years. They will tell the judge about your fragile mental state. The explicit mention of our parents and my personal mental health sent a cold shock wave through my nervous system, but I adamantly refused to let him see me flinch. My parents had always weaponized my past struggles against me, but attempting to use it in a corporate shakedown was an entirely new low. You do not have a lawyer, Bradley, I stated coldly. You do not even have enough liquid cash to buy a cup of coffee right now, because you completely maxed out my medical credit line yesterday. You are attempting to forcefully extort a business owner in front of a highly respected venture capitalist. Naomi sat perfectly still, her hands folded neatly in her lap, watching the entire spectacle unfold with razor-sharp eyes. She was critically analyzing every single word, carefully evaluating my crisis management skills in real time. I fully understood that if I lost my temper or showed weakness, the multi-million-dollar contract sitting on the table would vanish instantly. Jasmine suddenly noticed Naomi sitting quietly and immediately pointed her phone camera directly at the wealthy venture capitalist. And look at this. Jasmine sneered, her voice shrill and desperate. Clara is sitting right here, making shady backroom deals with elite investors, while her own family faces eviction because of her toxic lies. Do not do any business with her. She will violently stab you in the back, just like she maliciously did to us. Naomi did not flinch. She simply stared at Jasmine with a look of terrifying, silent authority. It was the exact kind of powerful look that only a formidable woman who actively controlled billions of dollars could naturally project without raising her voice. Put that camera away right now. Naomi ordered, her voice low, incredibly even and utterly commanding. Me. You are currently trespassing on private corporate property and committing harassment. I turned back to Bradley, who was still aggressively pointing at the stained napkin. Pick up your garbage and leave my office, I demanded. You are not getting 30% of my company. Our delusional parents can testify to whatever lies they want, but you will never see another penny of my hard-earned corporate money. You have officially crossed the line for the last time. Right on cue, the conference room doors swung open again. 2 broad-shouldered security guards stepped into the room. My receptionist hovered safely behind them, pointing a shaking finger at my brother and his wife. Sir, ma'am, one of the guards stated firmly, you need to vacate the premises immediately. You are trespassing and disrupting business operations. Bradley whipped around to face the guards, his face contorted with rage. Do not touch me, he bellowed, puffing his chest out. I am a legal co-founder of this agency. I demand you remove this woman instead. He pointed a shaking finger back at me. The guards did not blink at his display. Sir, we are not asking again, the lead guard warned. If you do not leave right now, we will physically remove you. Jasmine recognized the escalating physical threat, but instead of backing down, she doubled down on her victim narrative. She shoved her phone camera right into the lead guard's face. Are you threatening us? She shrieked to her camera. Look at this, you guys. Corporate security is threatening a successful influencer and her husband. They are trying to silence us. Clara is orchestrating an attack against her family because we are exposing her frauds today. Please call the police. The sheer level of delusion was staggering, but I remained perfectly still, refusing to give her camera the chaotic reaction she so desperately craved. Naomi watched the entire spectacle unfold from her seat, her expression completely unreadable, her hands still folded neatly on the mahogany table. Ma'am put the recording device away and stepped toward the exit, the second guard ordered, reaching out to gently guide Jasmine by the elbow. The moment his gloved hand brushed against her silk sleeve, Jasmine unleashed a piercing theatrical scream that aggressively echoed off the glass walls. "Do not assault me," she wailed loudly, throwing her body backward against the edge of the conference table. "Bradley, do something. They are attacking me." That was the exact trigger Bradley needed to completely lose whatever fragile grip he still had on reality. With a guttural yell, he lunged forward wildly, shoving the lead security guard in the chest with both of his hands. It was a monumentally stupid decision. The seasoned guard barely moved an inch, effortlessly absorbing the weak impact, before swiftly grabbing Bradley by the lapels of his custom velvet blazer. In one fluid, practiced motion, the guard spun Bradley around, forcefully pinning his arms firmly behind his back and marching him aggressively toward the open doorway. "Get your hands off me," Bradley roared, thrashing his body violently from side to side in a desperate attempt to break free from the iron grip. "You cannot do this to me. I have a written contract. I am taking everything from you, Clara. I am calling Mom and Dad right now. They are going to completely destroy your reputation. You are going to lose absolutely everything." The second guard immediately stepped in to assist his partner, grabbing Bradley's other arm to completely immobilize him. Together, they easily lifted my thrashing brother entirely off his feet. His expensive leather shoes scraped aggressively against the polished hardwood floor as they dragged him backward out of the conference room. Jasmine completely panicked as she watched her primary source of leverage being physically removed from the premises. She scrambled to follow them, her heels slipping wildly on the smooth floor, all while desperately trying to keep her camera perfectly focused on the dramatic exit. "You are all going to federal prison," Jasmine screamed, her voice cracking with unhinged hysteria. "My loyal followers are calling the authorities right now. We are going to sue this entire building. Cancel Clara, cancel her completely." The loud, chaotic sounds of their physical struggle rapidly spilled out into the main reception area of my corporate office suite. My entire staff had cautiously stepped out of their respective offices, standing in stunned silence as they watched the violent spectacle unfold before their eyes. Bradley was still kicking his legs and screaming idle threats into the air, completely destroying any lingering shred of his fake professional dignity. Jasmine was trailing closely behind the guards, weeping loudly and performing for her digital audience. I stood completely motionless in the center of the conference room, watching silently through the transparent glass walls as the two security guards expertly navigated the struggling couple toward the main elevators at the end of the hall. The heavy glass double doors of my agency finally swung shut behind them, abruptly, cutting off the shrill sounds of their frantic screaming. The sudden, profound silence that descended upon the office felt incredibly heavy and suffocating. My dedicated staff slowly returned to their desks, their eyes wide with residual shock, nervously whispering among themselves about what they had just been forced to witness. I took a slow, deep, steadying breath, consciously willing my racing heart to slow down, feeling the massive surge of adrenaline slowly begin to recede from my veins. The immediate physical threat was officially gone. But the professional damage they had intentionally inflicted was currently sitting right at the conference table. I slowly turned around to face Naomi. She had not moved a single inch during the entire chaotic ordeal. The multi-million-dollar contract remained untouched on the table, sitting directly next to Bradley's pathetic stained bar napkin. My heart hammered very aggressively against my ribs as I braced myself for the inevitable professional fallout. "Naomi," I started, my voice trembling slightly, despite my absolute best efforts to keep it perfectly professional and composed under the immense pressure. "I cannot apologize enough for that unacceptable disruption. That was my arranged brother and his wife. They are currently dealing with severe financial ruin, and I recently cut off their access to my personal funds. I assure you they have absolutely no legal claim to this agency, and this isolated incident will not affect my dedicated work for your fund in any way." Naomi did not immediately respond to my desperate assurance. She slowly reached across the polished mahogany table and picked up her gold pen, She stared at it for a long, heavy moment before carefully placing it back inside her designer leather briefcase. The metallic snap of the briefcase closing sounded like a gunshot in the quiet conference room. Clara Naomi began, her tone completely devoid of any emotion whatsoever. I hired you because your initial pitch demonstrated exceptional crisis management skills. My venture capital fund is dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in highly sensitive investor capital right now. We require a public relations partner who quietly extinguishes fires before they ever reach the public eye. I cannot under any circumstances partner with an agency whose own founder is actively embroiled in a viral trashy family meltdown. Naomi, please, I urged, stepping slightly closer to the table to plead my case. I can assure you that Jasmine has a very localized, negligible online following. Her live stream will not gain any significant traction in our corporate sphere. I have already drafted a rapid response legal strategy to aggressively handle their baseless claims. I will securely manage the situation swiftly. You will absolutely never hear about them again. I promise, trying to maintain eye contact. It is not just the chaotic live stream, Clara Naomi stated coldly, standing up from her chair and straightening her pristine cream suit. I received a highly concerning phone call this morning, before I even arrived at your office for this meeting. The phone call was from an older woman, claiming to be your mother, Barbara. My stomach completely dropped. The solid hardwood floor suddenly felt like it was violently dissolving beneath my feet. My mother called you? I repeated, the sheer shock overtaking me. How did she actually get your direct contact information? She managed to aggressively bypass my executive assistant by claiming there was a severe medical emergency regarding you. Naomi explained, her eyes narrowing with distinct professional disapproval. Once she got me on the direct line, she proceeded to warn me that you were currently under active investigation for severe financial fraud. She explicitly claimed that you were heavily embezzling funds from a joint family venture, and that the true legal ownership of this public relations agency is currently being heavily contested by your older brother in an ongoing legal dispute. My breath caught in my throat. I felt physically sick to my stomach. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to unconditionally protect me, had actively hunted down my most lucrative corporate client just to intentionally sabotage my career. She lied to you, Naomi, I said, my voice shaking with a potent mixture of profound grief and sudden rage. They are completely broke. They secretly maxed out my emergency credit cards to fund their lavish lifestyle. And now they are systematically attempting to extort me because I finally cut off their endless cash supply. Every single word of the story she told you is an absolute fabrication meant to intimidate me. Naomi picked up her briefcase, her posture rigid and entirely unrelenting. I do not care about the intricate details of your toxic family drama. Clara, I only care about comprehensive risk assessment and institutional liability. Right now, you represent a massive liability to my investors. Your mother explicitly warned me that if I signed this contract today, my fund would be dragged directly into a messy, highly public legal battle over your company assets. She also strongly implied that you frequently suffer from a history of severe emotional instability, which makes you entirely unfit to handle our lucrative corporate accounts. The air was suddenly sucked out of the room. I stood perfectly still, the profound magnitude of their coordinated betrayal washing over me like freezing ice water. They had not just chosen Bradley over me, they had actively conspired to destroy my professional reputation, terrorize my wealthy clients, and completely ruin the business I had sacrificed everything to build. They were intentionally starving me out, hoping that if I lost my major clients, I would be quickly forced to surrender my equity just to survive financially. They are actively trying to extort me. Naomi, I stated, my eyes blazing with sudden furious clarity as the scattered puzzle pieces finally connected inside my mind today. They are deliberately attempting to destroy my livelihood to force a payout they absolutely do not deserve. Then, you urgently need to deal with your extortionists, Naomi said, walking briskly toward the glass conference room door. I am a venture capitalist, not a family counselor. I am officially pausing this multi-million-dollar contract indefinitely. I will not attach my reputable brand to a chief executive officer who cannot even control her own inner circle. My name is Audra. I am 34 years old, and just 3 days after burying my husband, Nathaniel, I found myself standing in a crowded backyard for my nephew Lucas' first birthday party. My mother Brenda and my father Harrison had practically dragged me there, insisting that family comes first. But as I stood near the patio, trying to hold back my tears, my sister Sierra tapped her champagne glass to silence the crowd. With fake tears streaming down her perfect face, she announced to everyone that her son was actually Nathaniel Child. She claimed they had a secret affair, and then she pulled out a typed will. She looked me dead in the eyes and demanded half of my $8 million mansion as inheritance for his supposed bloodline. I did not scream or cry. I just looked at the piece of paper, smiled coldly, and said, "Oh, I see." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing out loud, because I knew a medical secret about my late husband that made her entire story a biological impossibility. Before I tell you exactly how I let my greedy sister dig her own grave. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe. If you have ever had to protect your peace from a toxic family, you will want to hear what happened next. The silence in the backyard was deafening. The gentle breeze rustled the blue birthday streamers, but nobody dared to breathe. I watched as Sierra wiped a perfectly timed tear from her cheek, holding that fraudulent piece of paper like a winning lottery ticket. Nathaniel was a high school history teacher who loved his students and loved our life together. He had died suddenly from an aneurysm, just weeks after his 35th birthday. My heart was still shattered into a million pieces, yet here was my younger sister, 30 years old and always the golden child, using my tragedy as a stage performance to steal my property before I could even process the sheer audacity of her lie. My parents leaped into action. They did not rush to comfort the daughter who had just become a widow. They did not ask if I was all right. Instead, my mother, Brenda, marched right past me and wrapped her arms around Sierra. My father, Harrison, stepped forward with his chest puffed out, putting on his best authoritative voice. He looked at me with the exact same look of disappointment he had used to control my entire life. "Audra, you need to be reasonable about this," my father announced loudly enough for all the guests to hear. "We know you are grieving, but Nathaniel has a son. You cannot just hoard that massive house all to yourself. You have to do the right thing for his bloodline." My mother nodded vigorously, rubbing Sierra back. "You have always been so selfish with your wealth, Audra. You stage those luxurious multi-million-dollar mansions for your corporate clients, and you live like a queen while your sister struggles. It is only fair that Lucas gets what his father wanted him to have. Do not make this a legal battle. Just sign the deed over." The sheer entitlement made my blood boil, but I maintained my icy composure. I looked past my delusional parents and locked eyes with DeAndre. He was Sierra's hardworking husband, a 32-year-old restaurant manager who had always treated me with genuine kindness. DeAndre stood frozen near the barbecue grill. The paper plate he had been holding slipped from his hands and crashed onto the patio. Baked beans and potato salad splattered across his shoes, but he did not even flinch. His dark brown eyes were wide with sheer devastation. He was an honest African Amian man who worked 60-hour weeks to provide for a child he believed was his own. Now his wife was standing in front of their friends and neighbors, publicly declaring she had slept with her dead brother-in-law. DeAndre Sierra started reaching a hand out toward him, but her voice lacked any real remorse. "I am so sorry you had to find out this way." DeAndre did not say a word. He stepped back from her touch, shaking his head in absolute disgust. Sierra let out a dramatic sob, playing the victim perfectly. "See what you made me do," she wailed, pointing an accusing finger at me. "My marriage is ruined because you would not just quietly share your wealth." I took a step forward, and the entire crowd seemed to brace for an explosion. But I did not give them the satisfaction of an emotional breakdown. I had spent my entire life being the responsible scapegoat. Now they wanted my house. I reached out and plucked the typed will right from Sierra. Trembling hand. The paper felt cheap. I scanned the text quickly. It was riddled with 10 basic formatting errors. Nathaniel was the most meticulous man I had ever known. He would never draft a legal document that looked like a high school homework assignment. Assy, but the real joke was the demand itself. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my designer purse. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention today, Sierra," I said, my voice perfectly level. "It is incredibly enlightening." My father scoffed. "We expect you to hand over the keys soon." I looked at him, feeling the very last threat of my loyalty snap completely. "You are right, Dad," I replied smoothly, turning away from them. "But you people are just strangers who happen to share my DNA. Do not call me. If any of you step foot on my property again, I will have you arrested for trespassing." As I gripped the steering wheel and drove away from that wretched party, I smiled, knowing I held the weapon to destroy their arrogant lives forever. I had just pulled my car into the immaculate driveway of my estate, the iron gates closing securely behind me, when I saw a familiar truck speeding down the avenue. It was DeAndre. He had left the party abruptly, leaving his unfaithful wife behind to deal with the mess she created. His hands must have been gripping the steering wheel with the same crushing betrayal I had felt when I lost Nathaniel. But my grief was born of a tragic medical event, while his was born of a vicious, calculated lie. I stepped into my silent home. The massive crystal chandelier cast a cold, bright light over the empty foyer. I did not shed a single tear. Instead, I walked into my home office, locked the heavy wooden doors, and waited. I knew my family. I knew they would not let this go quietly. They needed a villain to fund their lazy lifestyle, and they had just elected me to play the part. The explosion took exactly 48 hours to detonate. On Tuesday morning, my phone began vibrating violently against the kitchen counter. Notifications poured in faster than my eyes could track them. Pings from Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn flooded my locked screen. I opened the first link sent by a concerned colleague. Sierra had not just played the victim in private, she had gone completely nuclear. She had posted a highly edited, heavily filtered video of herself, sitting on the floor of her cramped living room, clutching little Lucas to her chest. She wept beautifully for the camera. She claimed that Nathaniel had been the love of her life. She painted a tragic, completely fabricated picture of star-crossed lovers kept apart by duty. Then she dropped the real poison. She called me a barren, heartless widow. She told the internet that because my own womb was empty, my heart had turned to stone. She claimed I was deliberately hiding Nathaniel's assets and trying to throw my own flesh and blood nephew out onto the streets to starve. Directly below the video was a link to a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Help a Fatherless Child Survive His Cruel Aunt." The campaign had already raised $15,000 from gullible strangers. My parents had immediately shared the post. But my mother, Brenda, wrote a lengthy caption detailing how she had failed to raise me with proper Christian values. My father, Harrison, commented that he was utterly ashamed to share my last name and begged his powerful business connections to donate to Sierra. I scrolled through the comments, feeling a surreal mix of disgust and fascination. Strangers were calling me a monster. Local community groups shared the video demanding justice for the poor single mother. The sheer hypocrisy of it all was suffocating. I decided to drop a single comment to provide some much-needed context to the digital mob. I typed out the harsh reality of our family dynamic. I reminded everyone reading that I had been the sole financial backbone of the family for a decade. I asked my mother if she remembered the $30,000 I paid to clear Sierra credit card debt when she faced bankruptcy. I asked my father if he recalled how I bought Sierra her first car after she totaled his while driving under the influence. I pointed out that Sierra was continuously coddled, shielded from consequences, and bailed out of every single mistake she ever made. While I built my luxury staging business from the ground up with zero help, I hit send. It was a massive mistake. The internet does not care about logic or financial receipts when they have a crying mother holding an innocent baby to pity. My comment only poured gasoline on the fire. They accused me of gaslighting my sister, of using my massive wealth to bully a vulnerable woman. The narrative spun entirely out of my control. The real nightmare began the following morning. I dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, determined to maintain my professional routine. Aura Staging LLC was currently handling the interior design for 3 major penthouses downtown, and I had a staff of 20 people, depending on my leadership. I drove my car toward the corporate plaza, but as I turned the corner, my heart sank into my stomach. A crowd of about 40 people had gathered on the sidewalk, directly outside the glass doors of my corporate office. They were holding up handmade cardboard signs. Justice for Lucas, share the wealth, boycott or staging. Neat Sierra had tagged my business page in her latest post, and her mob of online defenders had mobilized into the real world. I parked in the underground secure garage and took the private elevator up to my floor. My receptionist looked completely panicked. The phones were ringing off the hook. Clients were calling, demanding to know why there was an angry protest outside the building. The 2 high-profile real estate developers emailed me directly, expressing deep concern over the negative public relations. In the luxury staging business, reputation is everything. My parents and my sister knew exactly what they were doing. They were hitting my livelihood to starve me out. They wanted to make me so desperate and so universally hated that I would simply sign over the deed to the $8 million house just to make the nightmare stop. They thought they could break me with public shame. They assumed, because I had always been the responsible, quiet daughter who dutifully paid their bills and absorbed their insults, that I would eventually fold under the pressure of a public scandal. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, looking down at the angry protesters swarming the pavement below. They chanted slogans demanding I give up my wealth to a child that did not even belong to my husband. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from Harrison. The message read, "Sign the house over, Audra. We can call off these people today. Do not ruin your precious company over your stubborn pride. Do the right thing for Nathaniel's son." I stared at the glowing screen. They really believed they had me trapped. They believed that public humiliation and the threat of losing my corporate clients would force my hand. I locked my phone and placed it on my desk. Let them protest. Let them scream. They were playing checkers while I was setting up a completely different game entirely. I turned away from this glass window, leaving the sight of the chanting mob behind me. I walked back to my mahogany desk to review the morning reports, but a sharp knock interrupted my focus. My receptionist stepped into the office looking even more flustered than before. She apologized and stepped aside, revealing a tall man in a cheap gray suit holding a thick manila envelope. He did not ask for permission to enter. He simply walked straight up to my desk and dropped the heavy envelope right on top of my keyboard. "You are served," he announced flatly, turning on his heel and walking out just as quickly as he had appeared. I stared at the envelope. My heart beat a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. I picked it up and pulled out a massive stack of legal documents. The header on the first page immediately caught my attention. It bore the logo of the most notoriously aggressive probate litigation firm in the city. They were the kind of lawyers who thrived on tearing families apart for a percentage of the settlement. Sierra and my parents had not just hired any attorney to bully me. They had hired a shark. I flipped through the pages, reading the legal jargon with growing disbelief. Sierra had officially submitted the forged will to the court, but she had not stopped there. Attached to the probate filing was an emergency injunction signed by a judge just hours ago. I read the order twice to make sure my eyes were not deceiving me. The injunction mandated an immediate and temporary freeze on all of my personal bank accounts. Every dollar I had in my checking and savings was completely locked down. I could not withdraw a single cent to buy a cup of coffee, let alone pay my corporate staff. The legal chokehold tightened as I reached the third page. The court had also granted a temporary lien against my $8 million mansion. The property was legally frozen. I could not sell it, transfer it, or leverage it until the probate investigation concluded. Sierra had claimed that she and her son were at imminent risk of homelessness, and that I was a flight risk who might liquidate Nathaniel's supposed assets to hide the money. The judge, acting on the fabricated SAB story, had granted the emergency freeze. I sat down heavily in my leather chair. The sheer audacity of the attack was staggering. They had weaponized the justice system against me, based entirely on a cheap lie. They wanted to paralyze me financially, so I could not fight back. They wanted me to feel the walls closing in until the pressure became absolutely unbearable. I looked at the frozen accounts on my laptop screen. My personal funds were completely inaccessible. For a fleeting second, a wave of genuine panic threatened to wash over me. Then my private office line rang. The caller identifications displayed my father number. I took a deep breath, smoothing my expression even though he could not see me. I picked up the receiver and brought it to my ear without saying a word. Audra, my father. Bill Harrison spoke, his voice practically dripping with smug satisfaction. I assume you have received the delivery from our legal representatives by now. I remained silent, letting him fill the quiet space with his arrogance. You left us no choice, Audra, he continued, sounding like a disappointed principal, reprimanding a stubborn student. We tried to handle this internally like a family. But you had to be difficult. You had to cause a scene at the birthday party and disrespect your sister. Now the courts are involved. Your personal money is gone. Your house is locked down. You are completely cornered, and you have absolutely no way out of this mess. I stared at the legal documents on my desk, listening to the man who was supposed to protect me actively participating in my destruction. What exactly do you want, Dad? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly hollow and defeated. I needed him to believe that his aggressive strategy was working. We want what is fair, Harrison replied quickly. We want you to sign the deed of the house over to Sierra today. If you stop being so stubborn and just transfer the property to Nathaniel Bloodline, we will call off the lawyers. We will drop the injunction immediately. We will even go out there and tell those protesters that it was all a big misunderstanding. We are willing to forgive you for your hostility, Audra. We just want peace for the baby. The word forgive echoed in my ear. They were offering to forgive me for surviving their vicious smear campaign and their illegal extortion. They wanted to steal an $8 million asset and then have me thank them for letting me keep the rest of my life intact. It was a masterclass in narcissistic delusion. You really think this is going to work? I asked, my tone dropping an octave. You think freezing my personal checking account is going to break me? You cannot fight us without money, Audra. My father countered, his tone hardening. You cannot pay a legal team to drag this out in court when your accounts are frozen. The house is locked. The public hates you. Your corporate clients are going to drop you by the end of the week when they see the news. You are entirely alone. Sign the paperwork and this all goes away. Do the right thing before you lose your business too. I looked out the window at the protesters still marching on the pavement below. I looked at the injunction freezing my personal assets. My father was right about one thing. They had backed me into a corner. But what he completely failed to realize was that cornering a predator only makes it infinitely more dangerous. I will carefully review the documents you sent, I said, injecting just enough hesitation into my voice to make him think I was finally cracking. I need time to think about my options. Do not take too long, Audra, my father warned triumphantly. The longer you wait, the worse this gets for you. We expect your signature by tomorrow. He hung up the phone. The line went dead. I slowly placed the receiver back onto the cradle. The walls of my office felt tight, and the weight of their betrayal was heavy, but I did not feel defeated. I felt a cold, sharp clarity taking over my entire mind. They thought they had cut off my air supply. They thought I was just a grieving widow who would crumble under the threat of poverty and public shame. I neatly stacked the legal documents on the edge of my desk. I pulled out my corporate secure phone, leaving my frozen personal accounts exactly as they were. While the game had escalated beyond simple family drama, this was now a war of survival. I gathered my things and prepared to leave the office through the private exit. I needed to go back to the mansion and prepare for the night ahead. I knew I had to act fast, but I also knew I could not make my next move during the day, while they were watching my every step. I drove home in absolute silence, waiting for the cover of darkness to fall. I did not know that a knock on my door at 2:00 in the morning would soon hand me the exact key I needed to destroy them all. The rain began to fall shortly after midnight, pounding relentlessly against the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of Claire's throat, my living room. I was wide awake, sitting alone in the dark, wrapped in a thick cashmere blanket, and staring at the faint shadows dancing across the hardwood floor. The digital clock on the kitchen oven glowed a harsh green, reading exactly 2 in the morning. My mind was racing, analyzing every possible legal maneuver my corporate lawyers could deploy at dawn to fight the injunction. The sudden sharp buzzing of the front gate intercom shattered the dead silence of the empty house, making me jump. I walked over and checked the security tablet mounted on the wall. Through the grainy night vision camera, I saw a solitary figure standing in the torrential downpour. It was DeAndre. He was drenched to the bone, shivering in a light jacket, and clutching a dark canvas duffel bag tightly to his chest. I did not hesitate for even a second. I pressed the button to unlock the heavy iron gate and walked quickly to the front door, pulling it open just as he reached the covered porch. He stepped into the warm, brightly lit foyer, leaving a heavy trail of rainwater across the imported marble tiles. He looked completely shattered. The strong, proud man who managed a high-end restaurant and worked relentlessly to provide for his family was entirely gone. In his place stood a hollowed-out shell of a human being. His eyes were red and severely swollen, carrying the unmistakable weight of profound betrayal. He dropped the wet duffel bag onto the floor with a heavy thud. It contained his entire life, packed hurriedly in the middle of the night. I brought him a dry towel and poured him a tall glass of bourbon. We sat across from each other at the massive quartz kitchen island in complete silence for a very long time. The sound of the violent thunderstorm outside perfectly mirrored the emotional chaos raging within both of us. We were two innocent people drowning in two very different kinds of grief. I was deeply mourning the sudden tragic death of the man I loved, while he was mourning the sudden violent death of the life he thought he had. I could not stay in that house, Audra. He finally whispered, his voice raspy and totally exhausted. She was sleeping soundly in the master bedroom like she had not just destroyed everything we built. I packed my bag and left. But before I walked out the front door, I did something I have never done before in my entire life. I violated her privacy. He reached into his damp jacket pocket and pulled out his smartphone, placing it flat on the pristine white counter. He slid the glowing phone across the smooth surface toward me. "I know Sierra better than anyone else does," DeAndre explained, staring blankly at the glass of amber liquid in his shaking hands. I knew she was hiding something else beneath her public tears. She always uses the exact same password for everything, so I logged into her iCloud account from my laptop. I bypassed her security and went straight to her recently deleted messages folder. She thought she wiped the evidence completely clean, but she is not nearly as smart as she thinks she is. I picked up the phone and began reading the recovered text messages between Sierra and her two closest friends. The timestamp on the first conversation was from 3 weeks ago, just 2 days after my husband suffered his fatal aneurysm. My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot as I read my sister's words. Sierra had not confessed to an affair out of overwhelming guilt or a desire for the truth. She had meticulously orchestrated a hostile financial takeover. The text messages detailed her exact legal strategy step by step. She told her friends she desperately needed a massive payout to escape her hidden credit card debt before her creditors sued her. She explicitly stated that Nathaniel being dead was the perfect opportunity because a corpse cannot request a paternity test. She outlined her entire plan to forge the will and ambush me at the birthday party specifically to maximize public humiliation and force a quick financial settlement out of court. They were laughing about it, Audra, DeAndre said, his voice breaking slightly before hardening into pure, unfiltered anger. They were making sick jokes about how rich she was going to be once you surrendered the property. She used a dead man to secure a payday, and she used my innocent son as the ultimate bargaining chip. I kept scrolling through the damning messages. The sheer calculated malice was genuinely breathtaking. But there was another deeper layer to the conversation that immediately caught my attention. In one text, her friend asked if Sierra was worried about a court-ordered DNA test exposing the lie. Sierra responded with a laughing, crying emoji, and typed out that she would simply refuse the test to protect her baby from trauma until I signed the house over, because by then, it would not matter who the father was. I set the phone down gently and looked directly at DeAndre. He met my gaze with a fierce, unwavering intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I already know Lucas is not my biological son. DeAndre stated, his tone dangerously calm and terrifyingly steady. I have had my suspicions for several months because the timeline of her pregnancy never fully made sense. But I ignored all the glaring red flags because I loved that little boy unconditionally. But reading those deleted messages tonight confirmed something else for me. I am absolutely certain the boy is not Nathaniel's child either. He leaned forward, resting his elbows heavily on the counter. She is far too sloppy, Audra. She is far too desperate. She picked your husband because he was incredibly wealthy, and because he was permanently gone. She fabricated this entire narrative out of thin air to steal your assets. We just need to find out who the real father is to blow her story completely out of the water. The air in the kitchen suddenly shifted. The heavy, suffocating pressure of my parents' extortion and the vicious public smear campaign suddenly felt completely irrelevant. I was no longer a helpless victim waiting for the next legal blow to land. I had a credible witness. I had concrete digital evidence of premeditated financial fraud. And most importantly, I had an ally who was just as intensely motivated to see Sierra face the brutal consequences of her monstrous greed. I looked at the exhausted man sitting across from me. He had lost his marriage, his home, and the child he thought was his own, all in the brutal span of 48 hours. Sierra and my parents had vastly underestimated the massive collateral damage of their greedy scheme. They assumed DeAndre would just disappear quietly into the background, too ashamed of his wife's public infidelity to ever fight back. They assumed I would simply crumble under the suffocating weight of an aggressive legal injunction and social media hate. They were completely, entirely wrong. I reached out and placed my hand firmly over his. We did not need to sign a legal contract. We did not need to make any grand dramatic declarations. In the quiet darkness of the early morning, surrounded by the relentless pounding of the rain, we formed a silent, ironclad pact. We were going to dismantle their arrogant lives piece by piece. We were going to expose every single lie, every forged document, and every ounce of illegal extortion to the harsh, unyielding light of day. They wanted to wage a war over an $8 million estate. We were going to give them an absolute massacre. Tomorrow morning, we start digging. I told him, my voice turning cold and perfectly steady. You can stay in the guest house for as long as you need to, but right now we need to plan our next move. They think they have me backed into an inescapable corner with frozen bank accounts and a fake lawsuit. But I have a secret of my own, DeAndre. A major medical secret about Nathaniel that Sierra could not possibly have known when she picked him as her target. DeAndre looked up, his dark eyes sharpening with intense, renewed focus. He nodded slowly, bracing himself for the fight ahead. Let us burn their house down, he said. DeAndre did not just bring deleted text messages to my house that night. He reached down into his damp duffel bag and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper, smoothing it flat against the quartz countertop. It was a digital receipt from a highly reputable private genetics laboratory. I looked at the receipt and then back up at his exhausted face, trying to comprehend what he had done in the frantic moments before fleeing his broken home. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling heavily, as he explained his final move before walking out on Sierra forever. Before I left the house, I went into the nursery, DeAndre said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucas was fast asleep in his crib, hugging that little stuffed bear I bought him for his birthday. It broke my heart into a million pieces, Audra. It took every ounce of strength I had not to just break down and cry right there in the dark. But I knew I could not leave without securing the absolute truth. I used a sterile cotton swab from the bathroom, and I took a DNA sample from the inside of his cheek. He tapped the digital receipt on the counter with a heavy finger. I packed the sample, sealed it perfectly, and dropped it into a priority overnight shipping box at the 24-hour post office on my way here. I paid for the most expensive expedited testing they offer. They will compare his DNA to mine and run it through a massive global ancestry database. In less than 72 hours, I will have legally admissible proof that the boy is not mine, and we might just find out who the real father actually is. I stared at him in complete awe in the absolute worst moment of his entire life, while his heart was actively being ripped out of his chest. DeAndre had the profound mental clarity to secure biological evidence. He was not just a victim crying in the dark. He was a man meticulously building an airtight legal case against the woman who destroyed him. His proactive brilliance gave me the final push I needed. It was time to hand him the missing piece of the puzzle. It was time to reveal the secret I had been guarding fiercely since the day I married Nathaniel. I stood up from the kitchen stool, without saying a word, and walked down the long dark hallway toward my private study.